Learning objectives. By the end of this module, students will be able to achieve deep understanding of how voice is changed from one form to another. Also, students will be able to handle tricky areas like verbs with prepositions or with two objects, and they will discern and use passives depending on the particular context. Concepts in module. Introduction. The active voice. The passive voice. Change of voice. Verbs with two objects. Prepositional verbs. Auxiliary verbs. When to use passive voice.
A verb is said to be in active voice when the subject is the doer of the action. A verb is said to be in passive voice when the subject is the receiver of the action. Active. The dog chased the cats. Passive. The cats were chased by the dog.
We focus on the doer of the action when we use the active voice. The recipient of the action or the object becomes the center of attention in the passive voice.
Let's examine these sentences. The dog chased the cats. The cats were chased by the dog. The dog. The cats are the subject of these sentences. The dog in the first sentence perform action, chased the cat. The cats in the second sentence receives action, chased by the dog. Let us analyze these sentences further. Active sentence. The dog chased the cats. The dog. Subject. Chased. Verb. The cats. Object. Passive sentence. The cats were chased by the dog. The cats. Subject. Were chased. Verb. The dog. Object. What did you observe? The dog, which works as subject-doer in the active sentence, plays the role of object-doer in the passive sentence. Similarly, the cats, which is object-receiver in the active sentence, functions as subject-receiver in the passive sentence. Rules for changing sentences from active to passive. Rule number 1. The object in the active voice becomes the subject in the passive voice, and the subject in the active voice becomes the object in the passive voice.
Rule 2. If the subject or the object is a pronoun, it changes in this manner. I changes to me. We changes to us. You undergoes no change. He changes to him. She changes to her. It remains the same. They changes to them. Example. Active. She is reading the newspaper. Passive. The newspaper is being read by her. Read out loud this table and see how pronoun changes while changing active sentences into passive sentences.
Rule number 3. The change of verbs, tense, from active to passive. Rule for simple, present, past and future tenses. Simple present tense. is, are plus past participle. Simple past tense. Was, were plus past participle. Simple future tense. Shall, will plus be plus past participle.
We will try to understand these conversions with the help of some examples. We will begin with simple present tense. Active. I watch movies every week. Passive. Movies are watched by me every week. Next is simple past tense. Active. I watched a movie yesterday. Passive. A movie was watched by me yesterday. Take a look at one example of simple future tense. Active. I will watch a movie tomorrow. Passive. A movie will be watched by me tomorrow.
Rule for present, past and future continuous tenses. Present continuous tense. Am, is, are plus being plus past participle. Past continuous tense. Was, were plus being plus past participle. Future continuous tense. No passive voice.
Present continuous tense. Active. I'm watching a movie now. Passive. A movie is being watched by me now. Past continuous tense. Active. I was watching a movie yesterday. Passive. A movie was being watched by me yesterday. Future continuous tense. Active. I will be watching a movie at this time tomorrow. Passive. Take note that there is no passive in future continuous tense.
Rule for present, past, and future perfect tenses. Present perfect tense. Has or have plus been plus past participle. Past perfect tense. Had plus been plus past participle. Future perfect tense. Shall or will plus have been plus past participle.
We will begin by understanding what changes take place in present perfect tense. Active. I have watched a movie today. Passive. A movie has been watched by me today. Next comes the past perfect tense. Active. I had watched a movie 3 years ago. Passive. A movie had been watched by me 3 years ago. Now we will tackle future perfect tense. Active. I will have watched a movie by 6 p.m. tomorrow. Passive. A movie will have been watched by me by 6 p.m. tomorrow.
No passive voice for present, past, future perfect continuous tenses. Always remember that in present perfect continuous tense, past perfect continuous tense, future perfect continuous tense, there is no passive voice.
A quick glance at the rules. The active subject becomes passive and is placed as the object. The object of the active verb now becomes the subject of the passive verb. In case of the problem sentence having an auxiliary verb, it is modified and copied down. In sentences without an auxiliary, a form of be is used to mark the tense, being in the progressive, been for the perfect, is, am, are for the present, was, were for the past, the third form of the verb in the sentence is used. In an order, a request or an instruction, the passive occurs in the unseen part of the sentence. That is, I request you, I order you, I instruct you, etc. The main sentence given in the problem remains unchanged and is reported as an infinitive.
Let's learn how changes in sentences with prepositional verbs are done. While changing the sentence, which has a prepositional verb from active to passive voice, the preposition should not be dropped as it is the part of the verb. Active. They laughed at him. Passive. He was laughed at by them. Note: prepositional verb remains unchanged. Few more examples. They broke into the pet shop. The pet shop was broken into by them. They laughed at him. He was laughed at by them.
Auxiliary verbs.
B. And the past participle is added while changing the modal auxiliary verbs into passive.
Here are some examples. They laughed at him. He was laughed at by them. We should obey traffic rules. Traffic rules should be obeyed by us.
When do we use passive voice? Passive voice is used for the following purposes: to talk about the receiver or object of the action rather than the doer, to talk about the action itself, to talk in a formal or official tone if required, to describe a condition in which the doer is unknown or unimportant.
Change of voice from passive to active. Please note, to change the voice from passive to active, all the rules studied so far are just to be reversed.
Look at the following sentences. English is taught to us by Mr. Peter Daniel. Passive. Mr. Peter Daniel teaches us English. Active. The meeting was presided over by the chairman. Passive. The chairman presided over the meeting. Active.
Let's play an active-passive voice basketball. The teacher told us a joke. Passive. A joke dash to us by the teacher. Options are was told, is told, has been told. Active. A wave of strikes followed these events. Passive. These events dash by a wave of strikes. Your options are has been followed, was followed, were followed. These sentences are given in active voice. They called off the meeting. His grandmother looked after him. They will send him away to school. Now change these to passive voice. The correct answers are The meeting was called off by them. He was looked after by his grandmother. He will be sent away to school by them.